everybody. Welcome back to Percy Jackson and Poseidon podcast. This is episode 2, where we're doing the part 2 review of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Lightning Thief. So we left off part 1 with the trio going into the Lotus Hotel Casino in Vegas. And they sort of feel like this lure that's pulling them in, and they get there, and they're immediately just given a room and a cash-loaded card, unlimited, and it kind of gives the trio a break to rest up a little bit, take a shower, but shortly Percy starts to figure out that something is a little off. He starts talking to some of the other guests and finds out that each of them think that they're in a different time, in a different year, and so Percy kind of puts two and two together. And so when they leave the Lotus Hotel Casino, they've realized that a few days have passed. Time moves differently at the casino, and so now they only have 1 day left before the end of the summer solstice to get to the underworld in Los Angeles from Las Vegas. So they use the unlimited cash card from the Lotus Casino to take a cab ride to Santa Monica in LA. And it's kind of a quick, convenient way of having them just take a cab to get there, because we kind of just need to hurry up the story instead of finding a better way. It's kind of a little lazy just saying, oh yeah, this cash card from this weird casino, the cab driver takes it and it's just unlimited. It works outside the casino. But I get it, we have to get the characters going. So they get to Santa Monica, and Percy's just drawn to the water. And so he goes into the ocean, where he meets the Naiad that delivers him the message, and she gives him 3 pearls. And the pearls grants 3 wishes, and so he thinks this could be the way to get out of Hades. So they then try to find the location of the underworld. They know it's at a place called DOA Records, but they don't know where in Hollywood that is. They then get pulled into this waterbed store where they meet Krusty, known as Procrustes, who is a character from Greek mythology, and in this one he's a little bit different. He's a waterbed salesman, but if you don't fit the exact length of the bed, he will stretch you out, literally, to fit the bed, or if you're too tall, he will chop off whatever hangs over. So he's a bad guy, he's a monster. He immediately starts stretching out Annabeth and Grover, and Percy is able to sort of trick him into lying on one of the beds and is able to strap him up that way, and he releases Annabeth and Grover. So it's kind of a weird little pit stop scene. I don't really know why we're there, but it's also kind of a weird, fun scene, I guess. It's one last monster for them to take on before they get to the underworld. So then they make it to DOA Records. I think they got the address from the magical phone book and the Krusty waterbed store. And they get there and they meet Charon, not to be confused with Chiron. Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, and they end up bribing him with drachmas. So Charon takes them into the underworld, where they have to get past Cerberus. And luckily, Annabeth has a big red shiny bouncy ball that she stole from that defunct water park, and she's able to distract Cerberus so that they can all pass to the underworld, and then they end up meeting Hades. So they get to the underworld, and immediately the winged shoes that Grover has been wearing this whole time, they start to drag him physically towards this big open pit, which we know is the pit of Tartarus. And so the wings are trying to drag him, and Annabeth and Percy are trying to stop him. They end up getting the shoes off, so the shoes go overboard in the pit, and they rescue Grover, and that's kind of when they realize things have been set up a little bit on them. And then they meet Hades, and Hades thinks that Percy is the one that stole the lightning bolt and stole his Helm of Darkness. Percy did not steal either of these, but when Percy checks his backpack, he does realize that he does have the lightning bolt. And so Hades thinks that Percy's been lying to him and whatnot. And so Percy ends up using the pearls with Annabeth and Grover to get out of the underworld, not taking his mother with him. And they end up back at Santa Monica Pier again, where they're confronted by Ares, the god of war. And so this is the twist. This is kind of one of the big reveals, is that Ares had the lightning bolt. He didn't steal it, but he had it, and he planted it in the backpack that he gave to Percy. And that's why Ares had them go on that whole journey in Denver, Colorado. So Ares has somewhat been behind some of it, and Ares also can hear the voices that, and it has the dreams that Percy has of the voice that's coming out of the pit of Tartarus. And because he's by the water, Percy is able to defeat Ares by using the water, and the voice talks to Ares, and Ares ends up just kind of giving up, and disappearing. And throughout the whole book, they've kind of set up that, Percy, when he was fighting the Minotaur, he crashed Gabe's car, and his mom was lost, and now he's a fugitive. And people have been sort of spotting him all over on the quest in Denver and St. Louis and whatnot. And so they kind of wrap up this whole lost Percy storyline, and they kind of make up this whole story about how he was kidnapped by Ares and stuff. It's actually kind of a fun little thread that carries on. But after the Ares incident, Percy decides to take the lightning bolt back to Zeus on Mount Olympus at the top of the Empire State Building. So they make their way back to New York. They fly, which Percy is not supposed to fly because Zeus controls the sky, and he could, zap the plane out of the air or something. So, but they take the risk and they fly because it's the quickest way to get back before the end of the summer solstice. And so Percy goes to Mount Olympus on his own, while Annabeth and Grover go back to Camp Half-Blood and fill Chiron and Dionysus in on everything that's happened. So Percy returns the lightning bolt. Zeus is not very grateful at all. He tells Percy, "You're lucky I don't kill you," or something, and I'm like, that's kind of crazy considering he didn't even steal the lightning bolt. But Percy gets to meet his father, Poseidon, for the first time, which is kind of an interesting little meeting. And then Percy goes back to Camp Half-Blood. Well, actually, Percy goes to meet his mom, who has been returned from the underworld once Hades got his Helm of Darkness back, which Ares had. So Percy goes back to his mom, who's still with Gabe, and Gabe doesn't want Percy around after the whole news incident. And so Poseidon actually sent the head of Medusa to Percy's apartment. And so Percy kind of leaves, threatens, to use the eyes of Medusa to turn Gabe into a stone. He leaves it there with his mom to let her make her own decision, which is kind of nice. And he ends up going to Camp Half-Blood, and then we kind of find out that she ended up using that on Gabe and was able to sell the statue of Gabe to make a lot of money and get her own apartment. And she wants Percy to come live with her year-round for the full year and not go off to a boarding school or stay at Camp Half-Blood. So Percy spends the rest of summer at Camp Half-Blood, training and everything. And at the end of it, he needs to make a decision whether he wants to stay at Camp Half-Blood or he wants to go live with his mom in the school year. So on the very last day, Percy is then talked into going on one last training trip with Luke in the woods. And this is where we get the reveal that Luke is actually the lightning thief. So Luke enchanted the flying wing shoes to carry Percy to the pits of Tartarus with the lightning bolt. But Percy, I think Chiron told him that Percy can't actually wear them, so Percy gave them to Grover, and that's why Grover was dragged. And that Luke is going to kill Percy, but something stops him. And so Luke is the friend that betrayed Percy. And it's a really good sort of kind of ending to wrap up the final pieces of the mystery of the story. And then Percy recovers from the snake bite that Luke poisoned him with, and then he makes the decision to go live with his mom year round and not return to Camp Half-Blood until next summer. And so that's kind of where we leave off the book. It's kind of a pretty quick climax. Like, the real climax is the battle with Ares, kind of. And we're briefly on Mount Olympus talking to Zeus. And you were briefly in the underworld talking with Hades. So it's all kind of a very quick ending to the book. But I like that it pays off each little bit of the mystery and the prophecy as it went along. So I think it really is a good ending. And also Annabeth, her journey comes full circle, where she ends up reconnecting with her father that she thought didn't want her. So she's going to go live with her father. And then Grover, because he was so successful on this mission, on this quest with Percy, he does end up getting his searcher license and goes off to search for Pan, the satyr god. So they tie up everybody's little storyline, little arc, and the trio are really close, and they're friends now. And then we pay off the little hints about who stole the lightning bolt and the helm and why. And we learn that Luke is trying to resurrect Kronos, the Titan god, or the Titan of father of the six gods, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and so on. They're trying to resurrect him from the pits of Tartarus. So that's kind of the overarching story of the whole series. So we kind of set up what the main series is going to be about. The first book is just kind of the mystery of what is going to really happen with the Lightning Thief. And then now that we know they're trying to resurrect Kronos, Luke has betrayed them. That's sort of the catalyst going forward in the next books. But each book is still going to be like its own little story as well. So the second half of the book is a little bit quicker than the first half of the book, but I think it's really well done. And I really like Percy's progression. Like, he goes to the underworld wanting to save his mom, and he realizes that he can't do that, and he needs to not hand the lightning bolt over to Hades, because he could just hand the bolt over to Hades and get his mom in return. But he realizes, even though that's what he wanted, he can't actually do that. He needs to actually return the lightning bolt to Zeus. And then he gets confronted by Ares, but he's in the water, so he realizes how powerful he is, and he uses the water to sort of drown and distract Ares for a little bit. And so it's a really good ending of sort of Percy's journey in becoming the hero. And remember, he's only supposed to be like 12 years old, so I think it's really cool. And I like that we brought the Ares storyline back around. Otherwise, it would have just felt like a weird side quest in the middle of the book, but it actually ties in to the ending as well. So I think the ending sort of ties everything together in a nice, neat little bow, but also sort of leaves the door open for the future series. And there's a lot of hints dropped in the book as well, like Zeus's daughter, Talia, that was turned into a tree, and everything like that. So there's a lot of things to play off of in the next book. So that's it for the first book, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the Lightning Thief. So that's it for part 2 of the review. Stay tuned to part 3, where I'm just kind of go over quickly my thoughts on the book, the characters, the story arcs, and sort of comparison to Harry Potter as well. So thank you all for listening, and stay tuned for part 3. That's been the Percy Jack, Son of Poseidon podcast. Bye.